Okay, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite cars I loved back in the day. Well, I still love them. And then a couple of these cars were owned by my brother, my oldest brother. But he used to let me drive them, and sometimes I'd steal them and go cruising around in them, and I'd come back and say, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean? What I'm cruising in your car?" Because they were so, I was young and they were awesome. This was after Vietnam, my brother's cars. But some of these cars that I'm going to talk about, probably my top six awesome cars I owned. Some of them were after Vietnam, some of them were before Vietnam. If I can remember which ones were before and after, I might say something about that. But let me talk about the cars, the probably six most favorite cars I drove. And probably the most awesome car I drove back in the day, price wise, and everybody in town used to say it was the baddest car in this town. And it wasn't my car, but there's a whole story about that. The Butch, my friend, who went into basic with, his sister took us shopping, and his older sister, and she had money. And she said, "Butch, pick me out something that's cool, and I'll buy it. What kids think is cool." She says, "I don't even care, because the deal is you guys are going to wash that thing and wax it for me every week, and every Friday night you can use it." Because she had this boyfriend that had his own car, 57 Ford, if I remember right. And she was always dating, out with him. She didn't even need a car. So her and Butch were really close, and, she was really cool. She was older, and we were young kids, probably 17 at the time, or 18. And she was in her 20s, and she worked at a bank. So she had the finances to buy this car. Back in the day, I think it was like $4,000 or something. But anyway, I'll tell you what it was. It was a 1964 Chevy Impala Super Sport. 327 black interior, bucket seats. It was fast. It was dumped to the ground. It was just beautiful. Butch and I loved it. We probably waxed it 3 times a week instead of one. We had nothing else to do, so we waxed that car. Friday nights came, man, we were styling. We had our hair styling with hairspray and pompadours and low riding in that seat. Oh, we love that car. Okay, the second one was while I was in high school still. I had a 56 Chevy. I had a 57 Ford. But the 56 Chevy had a 350 in it, and it used to be raced at Raisin City, it's called, in Fresno, California. It was fast. It was a 3-speed on the floor, and it was powder black. And I loved that car. I actually bought it from my brother-in-law. But anyway, that was my, I'm getting these numbers screwed up. The next one I had was a 1957 Ford. It was a metal flake red. It was kind of cool, but it wasn't actually one of my favorites. And then we had a this was after Vietnam. After Vietnam, the first car I bought when I got back was a 1963 Lincoln Continental. And the story about that was powder blue interior, bucket seats, gorgeous, dumped to the ground. It was white with spoke wheels with knockoffs. And as I got older, after Vietnam, my son actually got into tattooing, and I have that very Lincoln tattooed on my ribs on my side, and my son actually did the work. My content guy, my other son, will be taking a picture of it, and we'll put it online so you guys could see it. I don't want to show you right now, but anyway, it was a cool car that I absolutely loved. I had a 64 Chevy step-side pickup. It was gray, but it was dumped to the ground, and I never did get to finish it, but I really liked it. Did I mention the 48 Plymouth yet? No. I had a 48 Plymouth. It was a metallic blue, beautiful. Dumped to the ground, had suicide doors, the old suicide doors, big old car seats, I remember, with this awesome interior. I loved that car too. It was an oldie but goodie. And I think that's the 6th that I had. And then couple other cars I drove were owned by my oldest brother. And he worked at a car lot for Toyota. And he was a great salesman. He'd sell 25 to 30 cars a month. And he'd always bring home a car. They let him use a car every night. He'd bring home a different car. So we were always running around in all these awesome new cars because they were allowed to do that then. I don't know about now. But shoot, he brought home about every kind of car there was because they had used cars there too. But he also bought some on his own because he could afford to. He had a 1932 Chevy Coupe, and it was yellow. And boy, that was popular in the day. 2-door, dumped to the ground, beautiful little coupe. I'd go all over town in that thing. He'd let me drive it. And then he had a 1923 Ford T-Bucket. You probably all have seen them driving around at one time in your life, the convertibles. And it had 6 carburetors. We call them deuces. 6 2-barrel carburetors. The didn't have a hood on it, so you could see the engine. You had all these carburetors, 6 of them going down the road, sticking up out of the hood. And it had 352 Buick in it, which is a big engine. And that little sucker, 4-speed on the floor, it would move. It was awesome. And I remember he had a paint job on the back. It was black. And he had this little picture of I'm trying to remember. It was an ant or something drinking out of a champagne glass. But anyway, cool little paint job. And he ended up selling that later in life. But boy, I had fun running all over Fresno down Blackstone where you used to cruise. Run around that thing, people thought you were something. Picture 18 years old with a 23 Ford. And back in the day, I think you paid $15,000 for it. And back in the day, 1972-ish probably, that was a lot of money, to own something like that. So we loved riding around that thing. So that's about, there's probably a lot more I owned, but I can't think of them right now. But these were my favorite.